Greetings to you all. This is our latest edition of INNERchamber Connections. INNERchamber Connections provides us a chance to speak with our guest artists and our special guests. And in this case, we've got Scott Good, our guest composer. Hello, Scott.
Hello, everyone.
And we've got Graham Hargrove, our percussionist extraordinaire. Hey, Graham.
Hey there.
So I'm just going to read you something, a little bit about Scott, if you don't mind. Scott, Toronto-born. He's a unique creative voice in the Canadian music scene as a composer, conductor, concert producer, arranger, and trombonist. As an orchestral composer, he's been commissioned by many orchestras across Canada, including l'Orchestre Symphonique de Montréal, National Arts Centre Orchestra, Esprit, Kitchener-Waterloo Symphony Orchestra, Winnipeg, Vancouver, where he was composer in residence for 4 years. He's composed many major works, including The Hands of Orlac, which is a 2-hour tour de force, which I've performed. That's amazing, accompanying the silent film classic, and Béziers, and musical portrayal of Rodin's masterpiece. Scott has composed numerous chamber works too, including a multidisciplinary work, Wu-Jing, for the Griffin Trio and the Cuban Traps virtuoso Daphnis Prieto, and a Canadian tour as composer, trombone soloist with ECM Plus in his riotous shock therapy variations. Scott's got some of the best piece titles out there. He's currently composer in residence with London Symphonia. In this role, he has composed new works, arranged for and conducted concerts, and developed youth programs, and acted as part of the artistic planning team, along with the Artistic Advisory Council. We are so pleased that we're going to be premiering Scott's new piece for percussion and string quartet as part of this concert. So let's go back a little bit. So how this program all started, I think, was that I heard that Graham had done this concert with Tafelmusik Baroque Orchestra, which included the Boccherini piece that we've included on our program. Tell us a little bit about that, Graham.
All right, about a year and a half ago, actually, I was probably asked 2 years ago to be a part of Tafelmusik's house music concert series. And they asked me to about the Boccherini Fandango. And since with Rhythm Bones, I also adopt a lot of the castanet language, it was kind of a natural translation to playing the castanet. It's usually a work with string quintet and castanets, and doing it with rhythm bones rather than castanets seemed a really natural interpretation for me. Anyway, it fits in with my my rhythm bone language very well. So we did it I think a year and a half ago in the fall, and this is the first opportunity since then to do it again with the amazing INNERchamber ensemble. So super excited for this Sunday.
Now, this guy, Boccherini, everyone knows that, well, we'll have to play it during the concert, you know, his favorite, his tune, this Boccherini tune. But the guy was so prolific of a composer. He composed 100 string quintets. That's insane. So, yeah. And this one, which I was totally unfamiliar with before, so it exists as a guitar string quintet, so with string quartet and a guitar, and it also exists as a 2-cello one, which is the version that we're going to do, with Graham playing the bones instead of the castanets, and we're going to play this amazing Fandango movement. What does this make you think of, this Fandango movement?
It's exuberant. Oh my goodness, there's so much energy to it. There's a lot of dance in the piece. At least it's written into the music. Fandango is a dance form in Spain, and you just can't help moving. It's such a rhythmically driven piece. So yeah, kind of a thrill ride for me at least, but I think for all 6 of us anyway.
It's awesome. It's very showy. We need a dancer. Scott? No, you don't dance. But it's a particularly great movement. Boccherini, he spent 37 years, I was reading, in Spain. And being an Italian, born composer, that's a really long time. And so he internalized all this Spanish language. Can't wait to share that with you all. And then, so we had it established that we were going to do a string quintet and bones. And then I talked to Scott. And Scott, how did well, we are connected on so many different levels through our work in London with London Symphonia. And how did this all come about?
Well, I think that you had Graham coming in for this piece, but you were thinking it would be great to flush out his appearance with the group a little more. And I'd actually had the opportunity to work with Graham, I guess it was 2 years ago now, at part of what's called the Listen Up program, which is run by the Griffin Trio, which is an outreach educational program. And I was doing some composition outreach, and Graham was there helping out doing some percussion outreach. And as a part of that is when he introduced me to his bones instrument, which ended up being quite featured in our performance in it. And I was quite taken with the instrument for a few reasons, actually. One, that it has this really interesting technical capacity to play interesting percussion music, and be very expressive for it. And it's also kind of a bodily thing, like when you play, speaking of dancing, there will be somebody dancing actually when you perform it. His name's Graham Hargrove.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's
so
true. It can't be avoided playing the bones,
Sorry?
Well, it can't be avoided playing the bones. There's a dance to the performance of it that is necessary for the sound production. So
That's right. It's a very physical instrument, and some players even take it quite far and become do choreographed moves and all kinds of things. And in this, it has a really wonderful, rich folk tradition. So that really interested me in the instrument as well, because I like folk music very much. And so when there was an opportunity to write for the instrument in the group, I thought that would be a great challenge to take on. I think that's how it started.
Now, from sunrise to sundown, Graham Hargrove would be quite content playing the bones all day. Right. But we managed to get another instrument, a percussive instrument, in this concert too.
Yeah. Okay, so
part of your piece.
Yeah, for my piece, I started thinking about well, there it is. It's a frame drum. Why don't we actually hear just a bit of it, or?
Right. There's a lot of sonic possibility. It's just a hoop and a skin. Yeah. So the simplest technology in the world.
It's awesome. And yeah. through Zoom, it may sound like we were just moving a desk, but no, that was actually a really neat sound that you'll hear much better during our concert. But the frame drum, I don't know much about the frame drum. So there's different keys that it can appear in. How many different frame drums do you own?
Oh, I'm not sure numbers go high enough. I have a lot of frame drums. I have a lot of Irish frame drums that are called bowrons, and I've got tars from North Africa and daffs. These are all different variations of frame drum, tambourines of many sorts. So I don't know. I must have 30 or 40 altogether. I've never counted, but a lot.
Great. And then Scott, how did you take those two instruments and create write a language, or kind of, how'd you do it?
Well, one thing that I was interested in was the idea of a percussionist using hand drums of a folk tradition. So those two instruments were connected to me. As Graham was explaining, you find frame drum in all over the world, and actually you'd find bones or instruments quite similar to the technique of bones all over the world as well. So that kind of interests me as a composer to explore these instruments that don't actually often make it so often into classical composition. And part of that is and you just heard Graham play, so it's great for me for you to hear that. To say, as a composer, it's actually hard to write something like that. Like, there's a lot of details, that are going on that are so much a part of the playing that when it doesn't have the same tradition that written music does, say for the violin, which in a way, like the violin and piano, the tradition's built to write for those instruments and write for them in a particular style as well. So bringing instruments that have actually a different performing tradition in, I tend towards leaving a lot of room for the players. And in fact, for the hand drum piece, there's almost nothing written in it. I just wrote instructions more about colors or sort of sense of feel. And also another quality that I think is very interesting about the frame drum is depending on where you hit it, you get a different kind of sound. And also with the same on a string instrument, depending on where you bow the string, you get a different kind of sound. So that ended up being a central part of the language of this piece. Mm-hmm. So that's how it was born. And I don't mean to sound incomplete, but this piece might actually be, I was saying, incomplete because this has excited me more. I might want to explore some other families of hand drum instruments as well and the ways that they can work with strings. But I think they actually work as a really nice pair. So
I've actually written one of the first pieces I wrote for Bones for a little group called Arrhythmia that I play with was a piece called Skin and Bones for frame drum and bones. So it's a really lovely combination. I find too, real yin and yang complementary.
Right. Yeah.
Simple technology, the simplest, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Scott and I can talk about the piece forever, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk a little more. There's another interesting aspect to, there's another interesting aspect I could discuss, which is the idea of meter and non-meter, which is sort of interesting in the frame drum piece. Mm-hmm. There's a solo also as well, like there's groove music and solo playing with the bones. Maybe that could be another point of discussion that I think is interesting. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
You know, the one thing I found, I'm so surprised, the first 2 pages of my own score, I am playing basically exactly what you wrote, which is so rare in percussion in anything. But the written part was so, and you obviously left room for improvisation much later in the piece, but what you wrote works so well. I'm keeping it exactly as on the page. And then about a third of the way through the piece, I begin to deviate from the ink and you know, extrapolate on the ideas and things. So it's a hard groove. It's 3, just to demonstrate for our audience. 1, 2, 3. Bop 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 bum ba bop 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 bum ba bop 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 bum ba bop 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 bum. And it's really an unusual way to divide a 3 measure. So the string players and myself all had to spend a little woodshed time to get that groove in our soul, kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm I was expecting, I'm going to be honest, I was expecting more like hair pulling after you had your first rehearsal. So I'm really impressed that you guys grabbed these difficult rhythms and just were going with it. That's awesome.
I think the hair pulling, luckily enough, was in the practice room. So we were terrific in the room once we got there.
It's quite tricky stuff, actually. There's a lot of cross rhythms going on.
So I think I'm back on my audio now. Is that right?
Andrew.
Yay! And so the improvised quality of this, so it's different every time, Graham, or do you practice your improvisation such that it is a little bit planned?
You know, I think I play any piece of music twice in a row, it's going to be different every time. And that's Bach or this. Absolutely, the journey changes. You can't step in the same river twice. There are many things about the Fandango as well as Scott's piece that I am scripting out. I'm doing very carefully, but there is a lot that I leave to the interpretation of the moment. It will change every single time I do it, for sure.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And so in the piece then, Scott, you know, what rules here? Is there melody? Is it rhythm, strictly rhythm, or is it both?
It is both. That's a sort of an interesting language itself for me to play with, is the idea of parts of pieces that are melodic, and so they bring the ear in that direction, and parts of pieces that aren't so melodic, say, are more motivic, or another word, especially in this piece, might be minimalist, which is sort of a genre that came in the 20th century where it's repeating figures. Although, to be honest, when I was writing the piece, I almost thought it was more like pop music I was writing, which very often pop music has repeating chord changes, which this does have. And what was sort of drew me in the piece was I thought that that's what it was going to be, but I kept wanting it to go. It's like this pop piece on a pentatonic scale, but it kept wanting to go to C major. Like it wanted to go to C major. And I finally said, okay, it was like a chorus to me. It's like, okay, here's the chorus. And then it was playing, and I went into the chorus. I said, but how can I get out of this? I don't want to write a pop song. Like it wasn't. And I just actually went back to what there was before, and it felt very strange going back, and creates, I think, actually a really wonderful mood of this sort of, there's this repeating thing that's growing, and suddenly it gets very romantic, but suddenly it pulls back into it and becomes, that's why you ended up with the word yearning. It feels like something is teased at, but then it actually goes away and then just sort of kind of vanishes. It's not sad or anything, but it is something about something incomplete that wants to keep going.
I love it. It's just a very satisfying thing to play. It was just, the more that we're getting familiar with it in rehearsal, it's just, it feels really good. Hey, Graham?
There's such a richness in the harmonic language. It's really kind of a beautiful thing to place, my rhythmic input into, because there's just so much going on. It's really, gorgeous. It's going to be a lovely piece on Sunday.
Well, thanks for joining me today. Oh, we're not done? No, one other thing.
I just wanted to add one more thing because it came to mind, and because it's in the title, the name Soul Yearning. The yearning part was kind of, for me, was that a harmonic thing, but the word soul was actually introduced to me by Graham, because I said that when I was talking early on, I said I really wanted to write for hand drum, and he said, oh, great, it's the most soulful percussion instrument. And I was like, yes, that's it.
Did I say that?
And so you did.
I believe it, so that's good.
And then so now that's it's sort of I'd already been working on the music, so I knew what it was going to be, but it helped me figure out what the title was going to, what it really was. So cheers.
There's so much soul in a skin stretched across a frame, it really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love listening to you play that frame drum, Graham. It's magic. Okay, so I'm gonna bring Ben on to our chat, and we'll say bye to you guys for the moment. So we'll see you on Sunday, Scott, for the world premiere of this brand new piece. And Graham will be seeing you at rehearsal probably in the next couple days. So thanks, guys.
Thanks, Andrew.
Terrific to see you guys. Take care.
Okay.
And welcome, Ben.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. So we have just a few minutes to tell people what the other two pieces on this concert are. So I think we're opening up our program with this Haydn String Quartet, Opus 20, number 3. No fancy titles, just numbers and opus. But man, this is like my favorite work. I love of his 68 string quartets. I think that this is my favorite. Ben, why do I like it so much?
Okay, well, I think you love it because Haydn's awesome, first of all. And yeah, I mean, Haydn, the Opus 20s are interesting. Like his early stuff, his sort of early and middle period of stuff is really inventive. Like it's super exciting. I don't know if he had some operas that he really wanted to write or something along those lines, but he was writing stuff that wasn't just like your standard sonata form stuff, like here's the tune and here's another tune and then we'll go back to the first tune and all that kind of stuff like that, because that's sort of the classical sonata form. But he was writing stuff that was inventive, and he took little fragments of stuff, and throughout the whole thing he was like throwing fragments around and he was developing things, and he was basically telling stories. Like it's really easy to imagine some sort of opera or some sort of story. It could be like a movie soundtrack or something, the way these things are. And when you think about the time period that he wrote it in, it was just so dramatic and so inventive. I used that word like 3 times already, but he totally recreated like form, like classical form, to write these pieces.
And when you listen to this first movement, especially, it's so conversational.
Absolutely,
it's so conversational, and there are there are treatises out there and written documents that guide us how to perform classical music, and they talk about within the musical language, within the classical musical language, being lots of what we would call now rubato, lots of push and pull, and it's just part of the dialogue. It's part of the conversation. And I think that with this Opus 20 quartets, and certainly including this third one of this set of 6, they're very democratic. They're very equal. All the 4 voices are super important. It's not like the diva first violin, Julie Baumgartel, and we're all, at her disposal. It's very, very equal importance, all 4 players. I just love that first movement. I think it's just, it's the bee's knees. I think it's amazing.
Well, yeah, he must have had some, I mean, I guess everybody kind of presumes this now, but I mean, he must have had some really good players to play these quartets for him, because he really wanted to hear everybody's point of view on these things, didn't he? Like, he'd pass the same tune around to everybody, and he really wanted to share this tune around with everybody who was playing. So he must have had some really good players back then.
Agreed. And with any of my favorite quartets, it has to have a beautiful slow movement.
Yes.
Oh,
it's a beautiful slow movement.
Gorgeous. Yep. You have fun with this one. This is like this is lots so beautiful cello. For the cello.
Yeah. It just kind of sets up the cello to just go wandering around a little bit. Like he's created these beautiful sort of harmonic changes, if you will, if you wanted to use like jazz language. He's set up these changes where the cello just kind of meanders around these beautiful harmonies, and the way that the cello is used is really natural. Like he had such an understanding of how string quartets or string players worked, that never do you have to, as a cello player, like work really hard to be heard. It's just like he knows how to create space for everybody, and he knows how to write stuff that just feels like it belongs on the instrument, for sure.
Yeah, so it's like physically sits well.
Yeah.
It's playable. Like not like super easy walk in the park, but it's playable. He understands the tensions within the instrument and how to get different colors, and then he writes so that the other players are complementing that whoever's got the melody at any given time. And it's just so satisfying. It's ridiculous.
It's very cool. Actually, if we're talking about stuff to listen for in this piece, as a cello player, one of the things that he really does amazingly well is he'll flip the cello and he'll flip the viola, so that the cello is playing above the viola part in a really nice range to be heard. And you'll hear the viola part actually being the bass part for quite long stretches of the movement, and the way he understands the way you said the way he uses tensions in the instrument. There's a really great way that he uses that sort of not way high, but sort of mid-range high cello voice, which really speaks easily through the texture of the quartet.
Yeah. And just to kind of nail this point home, because it's so interesting, I think, you're playing here, and then you move further down the fingerboard, your string length shortens. There's more tension within the sound that you're producing and the bow pressure you have to use in order to make it speak. And that sound just kind of into the camera. It launches it launches out there just that little bit more, different than if the violin was playing the same pitches when a much lower tension on one of our lower strings.
The stiffness of the cello string, because it has to be much thicker. When you take the same length of string on the cello, there's so much more tension that you have to create with the bow to make it speak properly, as opposed to, as you said, the same length of string on a violin. The ratio of the thickness of the string to the length of it is a lot lower, or however you want to explain that. But there's a lot less actual physics involved with playing the same sort of length of string on a violin. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, we're giving a physics lecture on this next week. I think it's next Wednesday, and we're not going to give you the details of how to test that lecture.
Sure.
It's quite something, actually, all string theory. Anyway, that's the Haydn.
Yes.
I'm making up stuff. Okay, and I love this Haydn, so enjoy, everyone. And then there's another thing that we've got on this concert. This is, and we just got a couple minutes to touch on this, and this is the Piazzolla Tango Ballet.
Yeah. We love Piazzolla, don't we?
We do a fair amount of Piazzolla, and I think it's great stuff.
Yeah.
What do I like about this one? Well, it's got a nice violin part, that's for sure.
Sure does. Yeah. I mean, it's again, it's got, I mean, it's got cool stuff for everybody. I mean, but Piazzolla, I mean, he again had that sort of drama that sort of goes beyond sort of the form of it, right? Like we were talking about how Haydn was changing the form and making it dramatic and making it something sort of storytelling wise, and Piazzolla totally did that with, like, he was they called what he did the new tango, which and what he did was take a whole bunch of ideas from like jazz and from classical writing and stuff like that and apply them to tango, right? So he's created this whole new form which uses like tango language but tells stories. And this idea of a tango ballet, I don't know if it was ever danced as I'm sure someone's danced it as a ballet, but it wasn't really written as a ballet. It was written to go with the short film, which nobody seems to know what short film that was, but the music stuck around. And so like he's telling again, just like kind of like that first movement I was talking about, the Haydn, he's telling stories, he's creating sort of a narrative structure with the tools at his disposal with tango music. So I mean, it's its own thing, but it always obviously is so referential to tango. We would never think of it as anything other than like real tango. So it's,
yeah. And I think where Piazzolla lies with our concert series, it's kind of like, it's almost a pivot point. It's kind of how it's evolved over time. It's whenever there's something that's rhythmic or insistent, it matches well with Piazzolla. If something particularly, sexy or alluring sounding, well, it matches with tango. And so here we've got this tango piece by Piazzolla, pivoting off the color of the Fandango by Boccherini. And then we've got the rhythm that's inherent in the Scott Good new piece. And the Haydn, well, they're both conversationalists, musical conversationalists. What do you think?
Well, absolutely. The one thing that Piazzolla was, as much as anything else, was a chamber musician, right? He spent most of his career working with the same group of people. He had what he called his tango octet. He added to the traditional tango ensemble, which was violins and a bandoneon, was like an accordion, and bass. He also added like an electric guitar and a cello, and he actually became very much a chamber musician. Like he again, very much like Haydn, traded the tune around among his players. He found players that he really wanted to work with and gave them the room to be expressive and be to be part of the process of expressing what was going on in the music. So he wasn't there to be the star, and he had like an accompanying band. He had this was his octet, and everybody got a chance to do their thing. And that was very much like what Haydn did with his string quartets, where everybody gets a little chance to be part of the expression. So that's a real connection, certainly between Piazzolla and Haydn.
I love it. Thanks so much for joining me, Ben.
Awesome.
We're having a lot of fun putting this concert together, and can't wait to share it with everyone.
Indeed. Yeah. See you there, guys.
Okay. Till later.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.